All right. Hey, thank you, Destry. So as he said, this is AI plus XR, Practical Dystopian 25 minutes, so welcome, you're in the right room. I am James Cooper. I'm the Chief Technologist for Advanced Visualization at Raytheon, and my co-authors on this are Dr. Brent Dingle and Nick Castillo. We are all part of the Raytheon Immersive Design Center, where our day job actually is to investigate and deliver on solutions for business needs. But we also, we're a bunch of dorks and geeks. We have way too much time and energy, so we come up with things like this presentation. Now, I do have 25 minutes. There's a fair amount of content on just a few slides, so I'm going to zip right through this. Hopefully you don't get lost, because I probably will. All right, here we go. So starting off, we're going to kind of go in a little bit softball, a little bit on the more practical side of things. Digital twin simulation. Talking about test-driven digital twin or digital twin development. So those of you with some software background may know test-driven development. Basically, you get the requirements from a system from the customer, and instead of just diving right into developing the system, you actually start by developing tests instead. And as you develop the system, you're able to run it against these tests and make sure that every step of the way, as you're adding new features, refactoring, doing whatever it is, you're always meeting those requirements. So extending the concept then into AI and XR, one of the challenges with test-driven development is that a lot of people, there is time and energy that needs to be committed into developing all these tests up front to begin with. And a lot of people will maybe do some of the tests initially, and then they just won't bother updating afterwards, or sometimes they actually just abandon it altogether and make the test at the very end, which completely defeats the point, but they'll call it test-driven development anyway. But using generative AI, what if something like requirements are supposed to be well structured. I say supposed to be because they're not always, but they're supposed to be well structured. What if then you can take these well structured statements, put them into generative AI and have it generate those tests. So you can do true test-driven development and make sure as you're developing the system, it is meeting those requirements, those customer requirements every step along the way, even as you're reiterating and doing regression tests and things like that. But then you could take it a step further and you could tell the generative AI, okay, you made tests to test for those requirements. Now let's make tests for the edge cases. Fuzz those values a little bit, go a little bit plus and minus outside the tolerances, and let's see what happens. And then you could take it another step further and you can say, okay, now break my system. Let's do what hackers do. Let's put it through a real cybersecurity test and figure out ways to break my system. And so using that, leveraging that, you don't need to go through and spend time generating these tests yourself or trying to put it through these tests yourself. You can have generative AI take that set of requirements and put it through all these different kind of rigors, requirements, edge cases, and just full on break my system. Next up, dynamic generation of virtual environments. So in that case, we're talking about, let's say, video game generation or simulations. Fundamentally, there are two ways that levels are created in these. You can either have somebody take the time out to kind of map out the world and figure out where different objects are going to be placed and how the levels are going to be laid out and things like that. Or the other kind of basic way is procedural generation, where you say, here are some rules. Let's say the lava world, the lava levels and the ice levels will never be next to each other because it just doesn't make sense. Or you're not going to have free-floating land masses unless you want to have free-floating land masses. But you set these rules up and the levels generate, usually at generation time, at load time, they'll generate these and create unique experiences that adhere to these rules every single time. Now, what you can do with this, and this is something that exists, so this isn't something new here, but I've seen a university paper about this as well as a startup's YouTube video about this, but now let's say you put in generative AI on this and you tell it, okay, you have this procedurally generated unique world, this unique experience. Now let's skin it. Tell generative AI, I want a Earth-like desert environment or forest environment, an exotic alien environment. I want something that's Aztec or Mayan themed, whatever it is you want, and it applies a skin on top of this unique world. So not only are you offering the user a unique experience every single time, but you're customizing it to whatever it is that you want to flavor it as. And so these kind of things, these will actually come back a bit more as we're going through the different topics. So now we're going to talk about, and I originally had this, we had a last minute panic here with the slides. Originally things were a little bit animated, but it doesn't really add value, so don't worry about it. Office spatial is the next thing here. So virtual subject matter experts. A lot of companies around the country, around the world, are having a big challenge over the last several years with people, subject matter experts, leaving. They're either retiring or moving on to new opportunities or just leaving. It's other attrition, right? They're leaving and they haven't adequately captured their knowledge or passed it on to the next generation, their successors. So there's some efforts going on in terms of trying to use generative AI as a general knowledge base. So you can start with that as the fundamental idea. And maybe the XR tie-in is that you pop on your smart glasses and you see a virtual representation. Maybe it's a generic avatar. Maybe it actually looks like that previous subject matter expert, but you have them pop up in front of you and you're able to do natural language kind of interactions with this person, asking questions and answer. But then, and you might notice a theme where I'm going to be, and then we take it to the next level. But how about if you're actually in XR and you have it tied into digital twins, and you say to the virtual SME, hey, I'd like to know more about how to operate this system. And the virtual SME says, hey, that's great, let me help you out here. Pulls up the digital twin in that virtual space in your headset and is able to walk through and interact with the system and show you just how to operate that system and answer your questions about it and maybe walk you through troubleshooting or edge cases, so on and so forth. And then, what if we take it another step further? These smart glasses have all sorts of sensors. They have cameras, they might have GPS locators, they might have other kind of capabilities. So then what if you're in the factory floor or some other place, you're in the lab, wherever it is, and you're looking at the actual system in front of you that you're curious about, and you're saying, hey, I'm having this problem here, I just can't figure out what's going on. These lights are flashing and I have no idea what it means. Can you help me out? Virtual SME says, oh yeah, I see what you're looking at, and says, okay, let me pull up information on, let me help you through. What's your question? And it pulls up the information, and then maybe it's also able to tie that into the digital twin and say, now, if you push this button, this is what you should be seeing. Or if you open up this panel, this is what the wiring or the circuitry inside should look like. And so it's able to help you in this much deeper, richer way, contextual information based directly on what you really care about right there. Now, the next ones, we're talking about office of the future in an AI and XR context. The first one is supposed to represent the very rightmost icon there. It's kind of the Hollywood concept. We always think about Office of the Future and AI and XR, kind of Minority Report or Tony Stark-ish. You know, you got these holographic displays filling in front of you. You're swiping your arms all around, you know, moving icons, doing that whole thing. But let's forget about that, you know. Let's just kind of put that aside for a moment. Let's think back to 2020. COVID happens. All of a sudden, all of us are sent home and told, start working from home. Do your jobs, but now from home, except for essential personnel, of course. And some people have been doing that all along, but for most of us in a very large scale, this was something completely new and crazy to us. How do I do all my jobs from home? How do I have all these meetings? How do I do all these interactions? And of course, we're told, don't worry, you've got Zoom. And we're all trying to figure out how to interact with each other on Zoom. And most of us, of course, don't want to turn our cameras on because we're actually still in our pajamas or whatever it is. But what if, instead of that, you're at home, you get a box in the mail one day from your company, you open it up, it's an XR headset, you pop that sucker on, and suddenly you're in a virtual office environment, and you look around, and there are all your coworkers there with you, and maybe alongside you hey, I totally skipped an icon, is an AI personal assistant, which I'll get back to in a moment, or the virtual subject matter expert, or all these other AI-driven personas, these avatars that are around you, interacting with you as part of this larger virtual environment. So now, not only are you there in a virtual space with your coworkers, your human physical coworkers, but you have these AI assistants. And now I'll go back to the personal assistant. The idea there is, now, you have things like, say, ChatGPT or MS Copilot, which of course is showing up in all our Microsoft tools, or hey, even good old Clippy. But those are supposed to be, of course, general assistants that help you just with very generic tasks, and they're supposed to be just, you know, general purpose. But what if you had an AI personal assistant that was for you alone? So it learns, it's observing you, and it's learning the ways that you work and kind of what your perceived strengths and weaknesses are. Of course, there will have to be some model of what is sort of the ideal worker. Maybe it's going to be specific to your task. What is the ideal office worker, the ideal engineer, the ideal whatever it is. But it has this concept of that. And so maybe you need a little help sometimes with doing things like sending emails or following up or filling in your expense reports. I really need help with that myself. But you need a little assistance in all these different ways. And it recognizes you have complete strengths in other ways, whether it's the leadership capabilities, maybe you're a technical leader more than a management leader, whatever it is. It recognizes your strength and those sort of gaps that you have, and is able to help you. And so this assistant is for you, only you see this assistant, but it is there, always there, helping you out. So it can also be there in that virtual office environment with you, helping you out all the time, helping you do your job optimally. But then now we move forward, so back down to the bottom again, we move forward a few years. Now we're in the paradigm over the last couple of years, return to office, right? There are a lot of managers out there who really want to see butts in seats. I didn't actually say that, don't quote me, but a lot of managers out there want to see butts in seats. So now we're going back to the office, but what if you went back to the office building and instead of expecting, and finding the same old office building that you always expected, you find a big old space. It's just like a warehouse, and you got little taped out squares on the ground, and maybe there's a chair, maybe a desk, and an XR headset. You pop on that headset and suddenly you're back in that whole world, that virtual world again, and you got the humans around you and you got the AI around you. But the key difference, of course, is that now the managers can justify the fact that they're leasing this building and they're able to watch the butts and seats both virtually and in person. So that's slipping a little bit more to the dystopian side. Now, taking more of a dive into that is, what if we go even further into the future? And now the AI has been living in there. The world is always on. It's always persistent. You have people around different time zones. You have people that work different shifts. So that work world, that virtual world, has to always be on. It is always there. So the AI is always watching and learning. Presumably it's getting more and more sophisticated. What if, at some point in time, this becomes the AI's world? They're living in there. Maybe they got little AI families they come home to after the day. Maybe they got AI bowling league or trivia night. I have no idea. But when you log into this world, you are actually logging into the AI's world. You are sharing a reality with the AI. They're not just there to assist you. They're actually living in there, and you're going into their home. Now, future manufacturing is kind of a fun one. Let's say that you are an assembly line worker. You've got a tray to your left, and you need to pick up one of 20 widgets in this tray. And you place that widget in front of you in another tray, you twist a little cap or something on there, you move it to another tray to your right side, and shoop, off it goes. And you do that for each one of these 20 widgets. A system watches you, it observes you, learns that process, and in digital twin, in XR, it performs that exact task. It says, okay, I got it. And you're able to verify that. Yeah, sure enough, you got it. Now it'll run through different iterations, permutations of that whole process. And it'll say, wait a minute, if I pick up that widget and as I'm moving it to the other side, I twist that little cap on it, I've already eliminated a step. I don't need to put it in the tray in front of me. I've already eliminated a step. I've already made this one, some percent more efficient. And it'll keep iterating like that. It'll keep going through all these different ideas, these possible paths, improving upon the process. Now, what might happen there, of course, is that eventually it might realize, wait a minute, the limitation are the humans. The humans, they don't have these two arms and these really simple manipulators on the end of each arm. That's a real limitation. What if I actually had an appendage instead that split off into 20 pieces? I'm able to pick up all 20 widgets at the same time, and there's another smaller manipulator that comes off of that, and I'm able to twist the end caps. I just made that job so much more efficient because I just handled all 20 of those at once. And of course, in the course of doing that, it just makes all of us humans obsolete. Oh well. This one, do you believe your own eyes? Perception is reality. The idea here, okay, so a few more stories that we're going to kind of go through these to explain them. Let's say that you're a firefighter trainee, but rather than having to light up a facility every single time, a training facility every single time, and try to give you realistic scenarios and maybe set up dummies or other kind of players or obstacles or whatever it is, you have a training facility in front of you. So it's kind of like a location-based VR experience. You have the facility in front of you, you pop on your smart glasses, and it applies a filter. And it's able to have realistic fire around the place. Maybe it has AI-driven characters. So it could be a person who has succumbed to the flames or smoke. It could be a person who is in the process of succumbing but still trying to get your attention. Maybe there are children who act more irrationally in this kind of dangerous situation, and they tuck themselves in a closet and they're hiding there. You need to be aware of that and figure out where they are and rescue them. And going back to the whole procedural idea, it is able to generate a unique scenario every single time that can still be governed by certain rules. So they're bound by certain rules, are more realistic, or they're safe, whatever it is. So that's one idea. Let's move on to the next one. Let's say, okay, you're already a firefighter. You're a full-fledged firefighter. You're experienced. You've been out there in the field fighting fires for a long time. You're going into a big fire, 4-alarm, 5-alarm fire, whatever it is. Fire's raging, smoke's all over the place, visibility is really low. You only have a very short time to take action. So you put on your smart glasses, and in this case, it doesn't wipe out the smoke or anything, but it's able to use some computer vision, object recognition, detection capabilities, and maybe recognize things that might be of interest. Maybe there's a perceived hazard that you really need to pay attention to over here. Maybe there's something that looks and kind of matches with certain degrees of confidence, bodies over here. So it is able to help the firefighter more quickly, safely, effectively, hopefully, go in and perform that job. So those are ideas around filters. That's the next icon there, filters. So let's say that we have an idea of a filter, like let's say a conference filter. So here, you might be at AWE, and you're looking across the audience, and you're saying, I have no idea who these people are. So with that filter on your smart glass, you put on that conference filter, and it tells you who each of these people are, and it tells you what company they work at, what technologies they're working in, maybe patents that they hold, maybe other things like that, maybe opportunities even for you to collaborate with them. Or maybe it's a sports game filter. You're at an arena, you see the teams down there, it tells you what teams are there, what play they just played, who the players are, how much money they make, who their sponsors are, who knows, whatever it is you want to know. Or if you're into social dystopia kind of stuff, Black Mirror, maybe it's a social currency filter. And so it'll mine their YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and whatever other social media you care about, LinkedIn, and it'll tell you how important this person is by some scale, some weighting factor, and tell you whether or not this person is worth interacting with to boost your social credibility and presence. And then the last one there is talking about, people like to say, I've got eyes in the back of my head. What if you really could? There is a product out there that I saw where it's basically just a camera in the back of your head, and it just presents a feed to you in the field of view there in your glasses. But that's distracting, in my opinion. That's kind of not really helpful, because you can't really always pay attention to that feel on the little video there. And if you're trying to stare at that all the time, you're going to miss out on what's actually in front of you. So what if instead we have AI monitoring that? And again, through object detection, object recognition, computer vision, those kind of capabilities, it is able to tell you, okay, hey, somebody's waving behind you, trying to get your attention, or maybe there's something that is dangerous to you that needs your immediate attention. There's a swarm of killer, what was that thing? Killer hornets, whatever the heck that thing was, or a rogue e-bike or something, charging right at you, and you really need to pay attention to this thing. So it lets you know, flashes lights, gives you a little warning, whatever it is, in your glasses. I feel like that would be much more helpful than a constant video feed. Now, evolutionary feedback loop is an idea about any kind of the sensors that we try to approximate on computers and systems today. They are really just loose approximations. Touch, sight, smell, all those kind of capabilities that we have we've developed over the long course of evolution. When we try to do it on computer systems, they're actually really kind of weak approximations of that. So what if we're able to help AI learn better what these things, these senses mean to us by having it give us feedback, perhaps in XR, and we're always constantly providing it feedback. This is what I see, this is what I'm smelling, this is what I'm tasting. And the context for this that might be interesting is to think about early COVID. One of the fairly common symptoms was a loss of smell and taste. And people actually developed training regimens where they tried to retrain their senses, recalibrate their senses to gain back some of that sense of smell and taste, to bring it back a little bit closer to where it used to be or where they think it used to be. And this AI feedback loop might actually be a part of that kind of training regimen. It might help you develop that. Learning competitor. Now, we might start off with something here, kind of like that personal assistant, where it is there to help you, and maybe it offers you a better way to do something. Hey, have you thought about doing it this way instead? But what if it does it competitively, helps you drive you forward a little bit, where it comes forward and says, hey, have you thought about doing this instead? And you look at it and say, yeah, okay, that's pretty good, but hey, I could do this, and it's even better, right? And the AI will come back and say, hey, yeah, but I got one better than that. And you keep going back and forth, improving upon each other until eventually you come out dominant, you got the absolute best solution, or once again, AI makes you obsolete. Last slide here, roads to improvement. A helping hand. There have been many times in my life when I thought I could really use another hand. That's, partially why I've got my kids here in the front row. They're my other hand. But what if, they weren't handy and you want to have something more like, say, a bionic hand? So not a little robot following you around or anything, but a bionic hand attached to you to help you out. But again, we're not, this isn't part of our evolution. We're not wired up to actually control these hands. So what if you have that hand that's attached to you that is being driven by AI? And once again, AI is learning from you, and it'll learn the way you operate, help you once again to be more effective, efficient, and safe. Let's use the example of, I just microwaved a burrito in the microwave, and I'm tired. I'm not really thinking straight. I just came home from this conference and I'm exhausted. I'm about to reach up and grab that plate and burn the heck out of my hand. The helping hand might just reach up and grab that plate for me and save me the trauma of burning my hand and dropping my precious burrito. Now, let's go into enhancing animals. Up until now, the context has been that we are using AI and XR to augment humans and help humans do things differently or better. But why not extend that into animals? So once again, I like stories. We're going to dive into another story. Let's say that we're at a ski resort. A new skier has made the misguided decision to go down the advanced slope and has completely gone off the trail and has crashed somewhere, horribly injured themselves. They still have the wherewithal to call back to rescue and say, "Help, I've fallen and I can't get up." Well, that's a different reference. But I've fallen and I can't get up. So the rescue center, they take their trusty St. Bernard with that little barrel of bourbon. I'm assuming this is true. I don't ski. I don't know. But they deploy the little St. Bernard. And the St. Bernard is wearing custom XR glasses, little AR glasses. And from the person's phone call, it knows the GPS coordinates of where this person is taking a spill. So it maps out a way. So the St. Bernard sees a little trail of milk bones leading to the most optimal path. It follows that trail of milk bones to that optimal path. And maybe when it arrives there, that little helping hand pops out of its collar and gives it a real-life milk bone and pats on the head, says, "Good doggy." Now, the XR sensors, going back to that again, talking about the various cameras and other sensors on the headset itself, it looks at the person and performs a little triage and says, "Oh man, this guy's got a compound fracture. He might have a concussion. This is way more than a simple bottle or barrel of bourbon can remedy. This goes way beyond the St. Bernard's meager capabilities." So a little helping hand comes out again, maybe works with the works with the St. Bernard and puts a thermal blanket on the person, or performs some other kind of comforting, and it phones back to the rescue center with the information saying, "This is the situation right here. This is what I'm perceiving right here in front of me. Send appropriate rescue resources," and the helicopter then goes off. Now the last one, up until now, so I talked about AI and XR as tools for humans, and then we kind of pivoted to having it help animals to help humans. But what if we finally get to the stage now where we become tools for AI? So instead of us wearing that, maybe we have little prongs that go into our spinal column or our brain stem, and instead the AI is actually using us. We're not giving it feedback anymore. It's using us as direct data sources and says, "Okay, fire hot, ice cold," or other kinds of measures like that. Maybe it's able to shut off the feed to our brain so we don't have to go through the suffering of feeling all that kind of stuff. But the AI then uses us to get that human sense of what the world is like that we grew up in and evolved over so long with. Anyway, that's me. Looks like I got 2.5 minutes left. I am going to be running to a panel session. Ryan Wheeler over there, my colleague from Collins, we're going to be up with Campfire in a nearby room. I don't remember which room, but going to be running off very soon, so beam me out.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? We have a couple minutes for questions if anyone has any questions. Questions? Hands? I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm being over here.
So recently, not so recently, and most people know about it, there was a gentleman who wrote a program to search the Tor browser, found many kids being abused, and gave that to governing bodies, and they didn't do anything with it. Would you suggest that as a community, we still go ahead when faced with things like that to find information and give it to people that can do things with it, or try to do things with it ourselves when the governing bodies are not?
So, I mean...
That's a really heavy question for this panel.
No, it is, but no, it's a great question. I mean, I can't really speak to those governing bodies and investigatory, we're not affiliated with those directly myself, but I am of the mindset that information, it's a tool for us, and if it's something that we can take action with and use, it should be, given the constraint that it is not something that will harm others. Obviously within aerospace and defense, we do a lot to protect our data and information because we don't want it to be misused and to harm others. But things like that, my personal feeling, and again, not the voice of Raytheon in this case, but my personal feeling is things like that can help humanity and help directly people, we should be doing what we can to figure out how to best leverage it.